Almost 85% of autistic people experience alexithymia, yet know little about it. But why? Let's find out. Welcome, and thank you so much for watching. I'm Orionkelly, that autistic guy. I'm all about providing validation and support for autistic people and their loved ones. It's an autistic guide to alexithymia. So, let's start at the start. What is alexithymia? Put simply, alexithymia is a term used to describe a difficulty in recognizing, identifying, understanding, and expressing your emotions. But it can manifest in several ways, including just simply having trouble putting your feelings into words, understanding what you're feeling, or simply being able to distinguish between emotions. Alexithymia can be a core challenge for autistic people, and that certainly impacts their ability to process and express how they're feeling to their loved ones. As a result, this can lead to difficulties in not only forming but maintaining relationships. Also creates problems in managing stress, regulating emotions, and seeking appropriate supports during challenging times. But alexithymia can also contribute to health issues, as emotions that are not properly recognized or expressed can actually manifest as physical symptoms. Now, there are two primary subtypes of alexithymia. There's cognitive alexithymia and affective alexithymia. Cognitive alexithymia is characterized by a difficulty in identifying and describing emotions. So a good example of this is struggling to be able to put your feelings into words, or even an inability to differentiate between different emotions. Affective alexithymia involves challenges in experiencing and expressing emotions. An example of this could be you may simply find it hard to feel emotions. You may experience a sense of emotional detachment, or even a sense of emotional emptiness. Not surprisingly, alexithymia is more common within the autistic population than the neurotypical general population. In fact, research suggests up to 85% of autistic people experience some degree of alexithymia. Here are some examples of how an autistic person may experience alexithymia. We may struggle to both identify and accurately label our emotions. So we may be feeling something, but find it challenging to put a name to that feeling. Sometimes an autistic person can actually be more aware of physical sensations in response to emotions they're feeling, rather than recognizing the emotion itself. I'll give you a couple of quick examples. Rather than I'm feeling anxious or angry or whatever the emotions are, we might go, I can feel my heart pumping, my heart racing. I feel sweaty. I'm all sweaty. Usually triggered by emotions, but all we can pick up on is the heart racing, the sweatiness, the physical feelings. You may have an autistic person in your life who often says, my heart's racing, my heart is pumping, but I have no idea why. I don't understand why, but I've got sweaty all of a sudden. Probably linked to an emotion they simply can't connect. Another example of how an autistic person may experience alexithymia is emotional shutdowns in overwhelming situations. So we experience an overwhelming situation and we emotionally shut down. Now, I mean where we completely disconnect from our emotions. But why? To cope with the intensity of this overwhelming situation. Another example, even if we are able to actually identify an emotion we're feeling, we still may have trouble actually expressing that to you verbally or conveying it in an accurate way. So we're aware we're feeling this emotion, but the alexithymia creates a barrier between us identifying it and being able to verbalize it correctly to you. An example for me might be, I feel a little weird. I feel a little whoopy. These are odd and strange words that don't convey the actual emotion I'm feeling. I recognize it, but the best I can give you is, I'm feeling weird, man. I'm feeling a bit whoopy. Autistic people might also confuse similar emotions. The autistic person in your life may in fact have trouble differentiating between anxiety and excitement. You might think, huh? anxiety and excitement, I think they feel exactly the same. Sometimes it's hard to realize if I'm excited for something or I'm anxious. And this can be with our autistic son. If there's something new coming up at school or in his life, he may actually be really excited about it. But he thinks he's anxious or he feels anxious. Or it can be the reverse. He's anxious to the core. And we're like, oh, I think he's just really excited about that thing. And if you're wondering why that is, well, think about it. So the example, anxiety and excitement. They can actually manifest physically in a pretty similar feeling, in a pretty similar way. The physiological response is the same, or at least similar. Another example of how autistic people experience alexithymia is a delay in our emotional reaction. I might not actually realize I'm upset about something until much later, after the thing that upset me happened. The problem here is the moment's passed. It's hard to address something that's upset you when it's so far gone. It's just catching up with you. And again, for autistic people, this is a processing thing as well. But this example may well resonate with loved ones of autistic people, because another example of how autistic people may experience alexithymia is by displaying neutral, maybe flat facial expressions. It's like emotionless robotic face, potentially. And to add to that, I'm saying we may display these types of neutral, flat facial expressions in situations where other people may well display emotional reactions. Autistic people do not lack empathy. We've been through this, but it's a good discussion to have here. Why do people think that? Well, it's another example. Understanding, processing, reciprocating, showing we understand the emotions of others and therefore empathizing with them in a way that is neurotypically appropriate is a challenge for autistic people. This experience of alexithymia creates a real struggle to connect with the feelings and emotions of others, further complicating our ability to navigate social interactions. Another example of autistic people experiencing alexithymia, meltdowns, or simple physical outbursts. Yeah, well, if we can't verbally express our feelings, what are other ways that could be done? Meltdowns, outbursts, moments of dysregulation. Next. Now, when an autistic person who experiences alexithymia is upset, maybe distressed, they may really struggle to articulate what they need or how their loved ones, their safe people, can help them. Another example of experiencing alexithymia. It can also cause us to have a real difficulty in distinguishing between physical pain or discomfort and the feeling of emotions. In other words, differentiating between emotional distress and physical pain can actually be really tricky. A quick example from my experience could be gut aches. Is it a gut ache or is it a manifestation of anxiety? Have I had too much dairy today? Or am I anxious? All I know is I've got a gut ache. But this next example is me all over. As an autistic person, another way I experience alexithymia is through the use of a seemingly very limited emotional vocab. Okay, so you might ask me how I am or questions about my emotions. And as a rule, what you're probably going to get from me is good or bad or I don't know. Okay, that's another one of my favorites. How you doing? Okay, I guess. Is it okay that I'm okay? In fact, my initials are okay as well. So is it okay that I'm okay whilst still being okay? Okay. Another example is that we may attribute it to external factors rather than identifying, recognizing the internal emotional source. So for example, I'm feeling an emotion, but rather than saying, I've identified and recognized I'm feeling an emotion, I may simply blame it on the stress of family life, or it's been a busy week at work. And it's those stresses, like family life, work, that have caused my irritability. Not the emotion I'm feeling right now, that's not making me irritable. The stress of family life or work life, these things, that's what's making me feel irritable right now, or angry, or, in effect, experiencing an emotion. I guess it's like not connecting it to your own personal source. You're disconnecting it to some external factor. Another example of how autistic people experience alexithymia is after, let's say, a highly emotional event or a highly emotional situation. We may simply not be able to recall any details or really anything that happened in this highly emotional situation. So even if it was intense, we may struggle to be able to describe it or simply even recall the details of that situation. For loved ones of autistic people, this perception that the autistic person in your life seems to lack self-reflection, seems to lack an insight into self-growth, may be linked to alexithymia, in that we fail to connect our behaviors, our experiences, the things you use for self-reflection, for self-growth, to our personal emotions. Another example is our emotional reactions, responses may come across unpredictable or out of context or disproportionate. There's no easy explanation to this one. We can't anticipate or explain how we're going to react through our behaviors, in emotional situations, because we struggle to actually understand the emotions in that particular situation. And therefore, we don't even know how it may manifest, how we may react. Autistic people may experience alexithymia more, and as I said, the stat was based on 85% experiencing to some degree. So autistic people may experience alexithymia more during periods of sensory overload, during periods of dysregulation. As autistic people, staying regulated is really the key, in my opinion, to our quality of life. Now, that is to many factors, a lot we can't control. So sensory overwhelm, environmental overwhelm creates us to be dysregulated. What I'm now saying is, for those that don't experience this all the time, you may well experience alexithymia during these periods of sensory overwhelm or dysregulation. And that's simply put down to the fact that if you're dysregulated, you're clearly going to find it much harder to recognize, identify, express, or cope with the emotions you're feeling. Another way autistic people experience alexithymia is through stimming. It could be an increase in stimming, an increase in repetitive behaviors, repetitive movements. Again, this is regulation, guys. If we are struggling to express, identify our emotions, we divert to another way of trying to navigate through this feeling we don't understand, and that is through stimming. And for the loved ones of autistic people, so partners, people who are in relationships with autistic people, there can be a real struggle for the autistic person in your life to understand the different things that maybe are being put out, right? Love, affection, a need for something, jealousy, whatever these are. Because again, these are things that we struggle to identify, to process, to express. So clearly there's going to be an impact on relationships. Let's touch on the impact alexithymia can have on relationships. Now, if the autistic person in your life struggles to express their emotions clearly, or maybe it's more understanding, processing, and responding to the emotions of their loved ones, what do you think's going to happen? This can often lead to miscommunications and misunderstandings in relationships, which frankly can be relationship killers. Another impact is the autistic person in your life may have learnt to compensate for their difficulties in verbalizing emotions. This potential breakdown can lead to someone being misinterpreted or simply not fully understood by others, further breaking down the relationship. But listen to this impact. So an autistic person experiencing alexithymia may actually misinterpret the intentions of their partner, assuming bad motives, negative feelings. So it's interpreted badly. And this breakdown is simply caused by our difficulty in understanding the nuances of emotions. Intimacy can be hard in relationships with someone experiencing alexithymia. Emotional intimacy is created, cultivated through the sharing of emotions. It can also lead to repeated conflicts. If there's this disconnect in understanding the right emotions, it seems like you guys always fall into the trap of the same conflicts. And this isn't something that is intentional, but it's certainly an impact. For me, an autistic person who experiences alexithymia, I find parenting can be really challenging. Think about it. How do you form actual connections with your kids if they're experiencing emotions, experiencing things that you can't connect with, right? That you don't feel or understand, you can't receive it, process it, and express it back. So it comes across like you're a cold parent, maybe. And this can be even harder if you have an autistic kid like me. On to the key strategies. Let's go through some practical tips to help autistic people deal with alexithymia. Start with the obvious. How do you learn? So emotions might not be something you're able to visualize. Okay, so how about using visual aids? As in things that do the visualizing for you. These could be emotional flashcards, posters of facial expressions. And by the way, don't judge or shame an autistic adult for needing these. These aren't for just young kids. This isn't just the realm of primary school age kids going to speech therapy or physio. No, all autistic people may benefit from these types of emotional flashcards or facial expression posters. Stick them on the back of the toilet door. You'll have to look at them every day. Over time, hopefully, it'll help you understand and better identify and express your own emotions and the emotions of your loved ones. And they're always there, because if you don't crap, you die. You see what I'm saying? On the toilet door. It's a reference to putting it on the toilet door. I apologize. Another practical tip is to use your safe people. So build a support network of your safe people. Let them in. Let them help you navigate your way through this weird world of emotions. And be honest, guys. I'm talking about autistic people. Tell them what you think your challenges are, what you think your weaknesses in emotional recognition or processing or identifying are, and how they can help you. So be real. Like, let's actually get some action here. Let's not just talk about it. Another tip could be, in fact, these kind of social scripts or scripting things. This can be really useful for autistic people. Maybe you could develop yourself a set of scripts that you can use to express your emotions. So individually drafted phrases you've come up with that you can use to express to others how you're feeling. Rather than having to go through the agony of working it out, you have these phrases, these scripts you can go to. I'm feeling really overwhelmed right now. But this practical tip may be the most practical tip you're going to get from this video, because it's practicing. Is there anything more practical than practicing? Practice recognizing emotions in every situation of your day. So what I'm saying is, as you go through your day, open your mind to the possibility that it's a game, it's fun, right? So you're practicing, how am I feeling now? How did that make me feel? How's this making me feel? Because this is the thing. I'm an autistic guy. I rant. I don't want to go off on a rant, but I want to be really clear. I don't care who you are. If you want to be good at something, you have to practice. This is past the point of, needing to be proven. The best people, the greatest athletes, are simply the hardest working athletes. They simply practice more than everyone else. Using that and watering it down to your own life means the more you practice, the better you'll be. Colors work for some people. Another practical tip you could use to help navigate through the world of alexithymia: can you color code emotions? So actually assign different colors to different emotions and use that color code in your own identifying, processing, expressing of emotions. But listen up, parents, carers, support workers, teachers of autistic kids, or loved ones of autistic adults who need more help identifying feelings, is how about use metaphors? This is really awesome. Here's an example. Let's say you have an autistic child. You could get them to explain or express how they're feeling based on the weather. They might love planets, because planets are different, okay? So there's big planets, little planets. There's gas giants. There's rocky planets. There's stars. Or let's take it down a notch, weather. There's calm weather. There's windy, stormy. Get them to compare their emotion to a weather condition. How are you feeling if you were weather outside? I feel like there's a storm inside me. Okay, and then you can work through that with them. Metaphors make things more tangible. Metaphors can therefore make emotions more tangible. A practical tip to navigate through alexithymia is close to my heart, this one, and it's explore your creative side, explore your artistic side. Things like painting, writing, creating content, listening to music. It's in the doing of art, it's in the doing of creative things that self-expression actually can become much easier. Alexithymia is one of the many things you still may not know much about when it comes to life as an autistic person. There's no shame in that. That's what I'm here for. So, for even more, check out my video, 10 things you need to know about your autistic partner or friend or family member, just the autistic person in your life.